Now, the toughest part of this book, as an American fan of soccer, when you read this book, is, as I said before, the battle against disbelief, because you really want what you write in your book to happen. I mean, you really start thinking, God, I wish this is how it really, I wish this was true. Did you battle kind of the same feelings as the author when you wrote this?
I read a quote, I don't know, maybe a couple of years ago, actually, that said, it was something like, if you want to read a book that hasn't been written, then you should write it yourself.
Yes.
And, I'm one of those guys. I sort of came to the game a little bit late, I guess, but I played when I was young, but there wasn't soccer in my high school. So we all gave it up when high school came around and played football, basketball, baseball, and anything else where you could compete with your friends. And then when I got a little older, my kids started playing, and I came up that way, and then became a coach and went through the licensing stuff. And I was lucky enough, I think, that I had a couple of good friends who were also coaches, maybe a little bit older than me, but who were serious soccer guys, who would say, "Hey, you know what? Here's a videotape. You need to watch this, or make sure you watch this Champions League final that's on today at 2:30, or whatever, that sort of stuff." When there wasn't much on TV, and pointing me in that direction. Well, what I saw was, as a kid who grew up playing a little bit of soccer, but then more probably basketball and just street games, not really organized anywhere. But I thought, well, this is the ultimate player's game, first of all. Right. This is a game where, you see, obviously baseball and football are very structured, and you've got to do what the coach says no matter what. Right. Which I don't have any interest in that. That doesn't sound fun to me.
And that was in the book, too, I should mention, because you have a character who is a basketball player who's trying to pick between whether or not he wants to play soccer or basketball.
Yeah, I had that was Alfred Bauer, whose nickname is Pookie, the kid from East St. Louis, who actually was befriended by JoJo White, who was a player for the Boston Celtics, and he was from that area.
Absolutely.
And so he sort of got to know him a little bit through some camps and things at his school, and he was torn, between. I've got an opportunity. He had an opportunity to go to college and play at Kentucky, and it's the opportunity to go to college and play, or to go straight to the pros, which obviously, kids then didn't have that opportunity soccer-wise.
Right.
But he had that opportunity, and it was this coach, recurring coach, Gary Rickman, who coached for the St. Louis Bush team, who's obviously totally made up. But he's a guy who he sees his role with the club as developing players, and which is another little theme there, that he sees his role as, I can develop players or I can win games. What do you want me to do? I can't do both. And he sees his job as to develop players, and he's one that he lets Pookie know what he thinks. And then, of course, the big sell was when he talked to JoJo White on the phone, and JoJo told him, and not that this was me talking, but JoJo told him that basically the best athletes play soccer, and that's where he belonged, because he was the exceptional athlete, and he was only 6'1", so that sort of helped the decision process too.
Absolutely.
But that was one of those interesting little things where I wanted to throw that in, not to degrade the other sports, but I'm one of those guys who looks at Zinedine Zidane or Eric Cantona or Thierry Henry and those guys, and I say, where's our guy like that?
Right. And I think a lot of people do. Yeah. And I mean, in real life, of course, after the win over England, American soccer in the 50s, it nearly disappeared almost. And it could have been because of Joe DiMaggio. It could have been a lot of things, because there were a lot of immigrant star names playing in the NFL and in baseball. And, you have to wonder, and I wonder if you dipped into this in your research at all, was it the desire for Americans, especially after World War II, to not be like their European allies and enemies? And with all those immigrants in the United States, the sport still nearly disappeared after the 1950s. Is there a deeper historical reason that this might have occurred that maybe you might have tapped into during your research?
Yeah, actually, you're right. That's a good point. It is one of the things that happened, and I touched on it very briefly. That in reality, you're right. What was happening was an immigrant from Italy or from Portugal or from Argentina comes here, and maybe in the yard he still knocks a soccer ball around with his kid, but in public, or on TV, he's watching baseball or football or whatever happens to be popular in his city, so that he can assimilate into American culture.
Right.
And that's what really happened. In my story, because of the success of the 1950 World Cup team, it suddenly allowed these guys to say, wait a minute, I can be a soccer fan and or player and still be American.
Right.
So they didn't hide it.
Yeah.
And sort of, they all came out of the woodwork, and that helped with that youth soccer boom.
Yeah. And how do we get to this? I want to kind of advance forward now because we're running out of time. We're I think we got like 3 minutes left. But how do we get to the magical point now? What do we change in the development system in the sport here in the States? And is it even possible for us to ever catch up, if you will? Because, even the MLS has never even got close to the heights of the glory days of the NASL in the late 70s. So, what do you see? Using all the information and the research you've garnered from your book, where do we go now? How do we improve things?
Yeah, well, I have to admit that it is much easier to make up the history than it is to predict where we're going to go in the future.
Absolutely.
But I think we're on the right track. There's so many more kids playing, and it happens in different parts of the country. The part of Virginia where I live, soccer players have outnumbered baseball and softball players total for 10 or 12 years.
Yeah.
It's not even close anymore. All the kids effectively are playing soccer. Part of the problem is that we have all these kids. We sort of started from the wrong direction. All these kids start to play, and there's nobody to coach them. So you get moms and dads who haven't played to coach them. And this is maybe not today, but 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah, certainly was 10 years ago, right?
Yeah, exactly. So nobody knows how to coach these kids. So maybe there's some really good athletes that are playing the game, but they're just not. They're not going to end up being as sophisticated a player as somebody who grows up with, in a foreign country where he's had a professional or a former professional as his coach since he was 5 years old. So, maybe that's a part of it. That's going to change, obviously, because these kids that are playing 10 years ago are now old enough. Maybe they're out of college and have their own kids, or they're just getting into coaching, so they're going to coach. And so it's a slow process, but generationally, we'll see that continue to get better. But I think, the biggest thing is just the fact that MLS still doesn't pay the American kids like a guy can go play either another sport here, or if he can go to another country and play.
Right.
So it's going to be a long, slow process. And I hate to say it, but that's really what it's going to come down to, because parents are the ones who are pushing the kids into certain things.
Right.
And if I've got a kid who is an exceptional athlete, I think it's a pretty straightforward decision. If he likes to play football and he likes to play soccer, at some point, if I've got to say, as the generic parent here, I'm probably going to say maybe he should spend a little time playing football.
Yeah.
He's going to get his college paid for, no doubt, and then there's a chance he might go to NFL. And if you 1 or 2 years in the NFL, and he's set for life.
Yeah.
So there's a little different story. Obviously college soccer is a big problem because it's a wasteland.
Absolutely.
We send guys to college to not become soccer players.
Right.
When they're really good at 16, 17 years old, and then they've got no place to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
So that's difficult. It's great. For instance, the NFL's got a farm program that they don't have to pay for.
Right.
That's pretty nice.
Yeah.
And they have no competition around the world.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
That's a weird model we can't even compare soccer to that. That's an anomaly in the world of sports that we can't even look at.
Yeah, and we've been, I think, too long, almost just accidentally, because we didn't know any better, almost working on that model, the college to pro model, Whereas in my point is that if you make the emphasis in player development, and that is where, for me at least, you can change this whole thing around if you tell or if you emphasize the academy system and developing players that you can sell later on down the road. That's, to me, that's where the money is. And if teams understood that and the system was set up to support that, then I think when you start pouring your money into youth development.
Yeah, exactly. And if I'm a youth coach today, coaching 15, 16, 17-year-olds, I have to win games, or I'm not going to keep my job. And the problem with that is if I'm a 15 or U15 or U16 coach in Argentina or in Portugal or in Italy, I can develop one or two players every year that get sold somewhere else, and I can fund my entire academy.
Yeah, and justify your existence. Yeah.
Whether I win a game or not doesn't matter.
Right.
So it becomes a lot more on the scouting side, but also on the player development side, and making those players as good as they can possibly be. And there's an ugly side of that too, which says, at 9 or 10 years old, hey, you know what, you're not good enough.
Yep.
Get out of here.
Right.
And we don't necessarily want that to happen, but
No.
That's sort of the bottom line. We're developing the kids to go play in college, which should not really be the objective, I guess.
Right. And I guess the real problem with that is if you have these real young kids signing these pro contracts and things don't work out, well, the way things are set up now, generally, they can't go play college soccer. So pretty much their careers are over. Right. Because they've already signed a pro contract, and of course you can't be a pro and play college soccer. But
right.
I wish we had more time, Michael. That was again some of the fastest 30 minutes ever on this show. But I want to give you a chance. Where can listeners go to find out more about your book?
You can go to The 10 Shirt, all spelled out, the10shirt.com. On the website there, you can see a little more info about it. But more importantly, you can find out where to buy it, which the easiest place is to go to Amazon.com. It's there. It's also available in the Kindle version now. It's available at Eurosport catalog. I like to throw these different things out there because some folks get a discount here or there. Right. But that's all on the website. So it's the10shirt.com.
And I want to highly recommend it. I mean, I've had this book for a few days, and I'm just burning through it. If you're really an American soccer fan, you're going to love this book. So please go out and check it out. We need to definitely support not only the sport, but the people that cover it and the people that write about it. And Michael, I want to thank you for coming on, and hopefully we'll have you back again, and maybe you'll write another one. Who knows?
Thanks a lot, Dirk. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate it. You can stay on, and for the rest of the listeners, thank you for joining us on the Straight Red Card. Good night.